Good afternoon. Today is the 11th of February and I thought I'd speak about something which is quite topical at the moment, which is whether or not you need keyless entry in your next car. The reason I mentioned that keyless entry is quite topical at the moment is that a few weeks ago a magazine published an article about the fact that 90% of cars that they tested that have keyless entry failed their security tests. That meant that they were able to get into and start over 90% of the cars that they had on test without actually having the real key, which is kind of alarming if that's happening, to be honest. But first of all, before we talk about that, let's understand what exactly keyless entry is. So keyless entry essentially is a system by which actually you still need a key. So the moniker we have for it these days is a little bit confusing. You still need a key, but you don't have to press the button on the key fob to open the doors, and you don't have to press the button on the key to lock the car. You can press a special portion of the handle of the car to lock it, and when you get into the car you don't need to insert the key into the ignition and turn it. You can just have the key within a predefined area, normally in the two front seats, and you just press the start button and the car will just start. That's the definition of what keyless entry is. So I've got keyless entry on my 2017 Seat Toledo 1 litre Excellence, and I didn't really want it. It's not something I particularly requested. I didn't buy the car because of that, but it wasn't possible to specify the car without it. You couldn't delete the option, so I've got it. It's not the most reliable system. It's got a KESSI system, K-E-S-S-I, and it's a Volkswagen Group system, and it's not particularly good. Half the time it doesn't actually work, so you can use the normal button to open and to lock the car, and every time you want to start it, it's absolutely fine. You just press the button, as long as you're in the defined area in the front, the car will start. It's just it doesn't really work very well for unlocking it. What you're supposed to do is just hold the key, or not even hold it, just have it on your person, as in a coat pocket or in a handbag. And you just pull the door handle and it opens, and that doesn't seem to happen most of the time. I don't really know why. I don't think it's a fault of that particular car. I think it's just not a particularly good system, so I'd prefer to have a normal key and insert it into ignition to start the car. I don't really mind doing that particularly. But for some people, they find, particularly if they've got big bags of shopping, but even pressing a button to unlock a car is a bit inconvenient. You just just by pulling on the handle or putting on the boot handle is a bit easier, and you can see why that is. That might be easier, and also if you just want to keep the key in your pocket or in a handbag, just by pressing a button to lock it, actually on the door handle, and pulling the door handle to unlock it would be quite convenient. And I do quite like the fact you don't have to insert the key into the ignition to start it. I don't mind putting a key in, but it does kind of help. So yeah, from a practical point of view, I can see why you might want it. I don't think necessarily you need keyless entry, but it does maybe have its place for quite a number of people. The vulnerabilities exposed by the report that happened, though, they are a little bit concerning. What I can suggest is get yourself what's called a Faraday bag. It's essentially something you can buy that's less than £10 on something like eBay, that you can put your remote key into, and if you're not actually using it, it won't transmit to the car or any car, and so somebody can't jam the signal. That's the main thing, is that if you've got your keys in the house, for example, and your car is parked near to where your house is, then somebody can sort of jam the signal which goes between the two, because the key's transmitting to the car quite a lot of the time. When you unlock a car normally with a normal remote key, the that it's not transmitting all the time. It's only when you press the button that it actually will come on. So that's really the main thing. But if you really are concerned about that, just put it in one of these Faraday bags. That would be something I would say. The other inconvenience that wasn't really mentioned was the fact that if you want to replace a normal remote key, such as the one for my wife's MG, which doesn't have keyless entry, you just go and say to someone like Timpson, and you get it replaced. Maybe not an original one, but you can pick up a generic one for maybe under £50. Just to get a normal remote central locking key with an immobiliser chip in it. Whereas these keyless entry fobs, you generally have to have them programmed by a dealer, and generally they're about £300 if you lose them. They're a huge amount more. So that's something to take into consideration as well. If you do lose one of these keys for a keyless entry car, it will cost you a lot more to replace, and you can't just go to someone like Timpson and get that done. As far as I'm aware, you need to just have a normal remote key fob for that. So I hope you found that video useful. I'm sort of on the fence really as to whether or not keyless entry is a good or a bad thing. But don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to like this video. My Facebook page is facebook.com/Lloyd Vehicle Consulting. My website is lloydvehicleconsulting.co.uk if you'd like to pay me a visit. Always very happy to source a car for any of you who are out there, whether it's got keyless entry or not. Please just get in contact with me via my website if that's something you'd like me to do. Thank you ever so much indeed for watching.